Hello, everybody, and welcome to Gloves Off with David Singer. I'm here with Yolanda Berkowitz. A Happy New Year.
Thank you. You too.
I don't think I've seen you this year.
You haven't.
I don't think I've seen anybody this year, actually.
Still feels a little bit like 2020, but I'm happy to have a new year.
So we're going to talk to Yolanda about Friends of Miami Animals Foundation. But first, I want to give you guys basically what her resume is, which is extremely, extremely impressive. And maybe she can drop a couple lines in on each nonprofit she's worked on or with. Guardian Ad Litem.
Yeah. Voices for Children Foundation is the fundraising organization for the Guardian program, and the Guardian program represents abused kids in court with volunteers. And for almost 20 years, I advocated for kids in court, and then I chaired the board 2 years successive, 2 terms, and I've been active with them since 1995, and they do tremendous work.
Still active?
Still active.
Still active. So it was Voices for Children, United Way, board member?
United Way Miami-Dade. I am delighted to work with them. Community newspaper does a lot of what they do, which is see the need in the community and connect people. And, over 100 agencies that they support, elderly, financial responsibility. They really have their hands on the pulse of the important topics in the community, which is, the needs of our community.
Children's Museum?
Children's Museum is a remarkable resource. They've got a terrific school at the museum. And of course, they do the Free Tuesdays, I think sponsored by Target. And they have all kinds of community programs besides being a world-class children's museum. So that's really nice. And
now you started Friends of Miami Animal Foundation.
I did. I just want to mention also that I'm on the board of the Miami Foundation, which is a community foundation. And they also are, they sort of amplify the other work that I do, because not only do they do their own work, which is managed donor accounts and foundations, but they connect foundations and donors and organizations to amplify their work as well. And then a few years ago, actually in 2016, after seeing so much need in animal welfare in our community, I realized that my experience in child welfare, child protection, showed me how much one person can do when you educate yourself, when you work within the system, when you support the pieces that are already in place. So I embarked on that program. There are many days that I wish I had not gotten involved. It's soul crushing and really heartbreaking, but we've been able to do some really terrific work in the animal welfare community. So I'm just thrilled with that work.
Your resume is extremely, extremely impressive. I mean, I don't know how you find the time to do all the work that you've done. And historically, I know you've done, you haven't stopped in the last 20 years that I believe I've known you.
Well, it's nice that I don't have to go to a real job every day. I work, but it's obviously not, a place I have to clock in. My husband is super supportive. I mean, Jeffrey really is my biggest cheerleader. And I find that when you work hard and you are true to your word, doors open, people give you access, people hear you when you bring positive things to the table. So I really like to, increase capacity. I like to bring resources to the people that are doing the work. So thank you for that. And I love what I do. I really do.
It's great. Just to let everybody know who's watching, if you have any questions for Yolanda, please feel free to send them. I'll read them off. If anybody wants to sign in and say hello, I'll read it off. I appreciate everybody who watches the program. So tell me, you started Friends of Miami Animal Foundation when COVID hit?
I started in 2016. I had gotten involved rescuing animals, high-risk medical need animals over the summer. And my husband said, you really can't do this on your own. You should consider doing a nonprofit. And so I started Friends of Miami Animals Foundation, which does not do rescue hands-on. But, what we do is our mission is to save and improve the lives of homeless pets. COVID has shown us that in order to help homeless pets, we also need to help owned pets of owners struggling to feed their pets, for example, during the pandemic. Pet owners whose dogs have minor issues that could be helped pretty easily if there were resources available. So besides the hands-on rescue that I personally do, Friends of Miami Animals Foundation has founded a volunteer fair at the shelter. We funded grants for free spay-neuter for the community. We fund TNR, which is trap, neuter, return. There are estimated to be 500,000 feral cats on the street, community cats. And that's not a problem that the government creates or that the shelter creates. That's a community problem. So when I first got involved, I called David Lawrence, talked to him a little bit about it. And, I realized that I needed to work within the system. I needed to amplify what the shelter was doing. That's a word that I use a lot. So things like Friends of Miami Animals Foundation funded large play yards at the shelter, with 80% or more of their dogs being big dogs. If they're not getting out and burning energy, they're becoming stressed, they're becoming anxious, and those aren't good pets. So we funded large play yards at the shelter, thanks to Berkowitz Development Group, who funded actually Jeffrey funded building the play yards out, and then we created the covering for it so dogs can get out. We host their volunteer fair. We get 200 to 300 people attending the fair every year, and they have more than doubled their volunteer hours. And a shelter that takes in 30,000 animals a year really can't do it alone. Leadership is always very, very helpful and receptive to things that we bring to them. But at the end of the day, they're managing a very large population. So, our goal is to create relationships. Our goal is to bring resources to the table so that Miami-Dade County benefits from the work that we're doing. It really is a community problem when your shelter takes in 30,000 animals a year.
So, which leads me to a question, because I remember we were supposed to have no-kill, and this may be a touchy subject for people, but I remember where Miami-Dade County actually was supposed to have no-kill centers to drop your dogs off. Are we moving in that direction now, or is it still an issue with getting a large group of a population of dogs in where you have no place to put them, that you still have to put them down?
So Miami-Dade Animal Services, contrary to what uninformed and frankly malicious people put out there, is a no-kill shelter.
It is a no-kill
You
center.
can talk to the ASPCA,
Okay.
You can talk with the Humane Society of the United States, you can talk with Best Friends Animal Society. They will all tell you, all the leaders in animal welfare will tell you Miami-Dade is a no-kill shelter. No-kill simply means that 90% of the animals make it out alive. So this year, I think Miami-Dade is at about 97%. Now, we have to take into account that they've taken in less animals, because another problem we're having with COVID is animal control officers are not picking up animals routinely. They're picking up dangerous animals or injured or, severely injured animals. So they're not taking in as many, but they're still taking in probably 20 to 25,000. So they are a no-kill shelter. Dogs that don't make it out alive are dogs that have behavior issues. So you get a dog that's aggressive or reactive. They keep him in the medical ward. They give him trazodone to calm him down. If the dog doesn't improve, how long do you keep a dog isolated and medicated? Pleading with the community to help these animals. So animals that are severely injured. I personally just rescued a dog that was going to be put down. He was going to be put to sleep that afternoon. I pulled him out. It turned out many thousands of dollars later that the dog had cancer in his nose. He was bleeding nonstop from his nose. We did a lot of diagnostics, and he had a hemangiosarcoma, which is it's a cancer, a tumor on his heart. I had to put the dog down after 4 days. Now, the shelter would have put him down a few days before. He would not have had a chance. Those are the hard luck cases that I personally want to help. But the shelter Miami-Dade Animal Services has a lot of really good rescue partner relationships, rescues that take these high-risk dogs and get the medical care and help them get adopted. But, the goal of Friends of Miami Animals Foundation is to raise awareness through education, advocacy, financial support, raise awareness about the needs at the shelter. So, I really wish that more people would tour the shelter, would look at the information. It's a little bit of like what's going on in this country where, everything is fake news. So no matter what you put out there, they're cooking the books, they're lying, they're changing the story. So I don't think any of that is helpful. I work very close.
Actually, I was under the impression, and you just straightened me out on live TV, that it is a no-kill center, when I thought the whole time that there were dogs that actually were put to sleep. But it's not. But it's dogs that really can't be retrained to the point where you want a family with a couple kids to adopt them. It's dogs that are in need of, unfortunately,
And often well-meaning people will see a dog because the shelter sends out pleas every single day for dogs that need out of the shelter. They're not promoting the dog that's going to be adopted. They're not promoting the puppy. Those are not the dogs that need out. They recently shared a dog, and I think that somebody must have wanted to save the dog and ran to the shelter and adopted the dog and then returned the dog not very long later because the dog is reactive to other dogs, because the dog has impulse control issues. So the dog is at risk, and probably more at risk because someone not prepared to tackle the issues. But again, I think we really have to look at, a few years ago, there was a movie that was put out in the community, and I was invited to the opening, and so I went. It was co-sponsored by the Miami Herald, and I contacted the Herald, and I said, have you ever been to the shelter? Do you know anything? No, really haven't been to the shelter. So I had the editorial board, publisher, and the editorial board at the shelter. They had no idea what was there. They had no idea what the work was. And frankly, when I tell people that the shelter takes in 30,000 animals a year, they're stunned. And that's year after year after year.
Is that a combination of cats and dogs?
That's cats and dogs.
Okay.
It's probably a little bit more dogs. But it's owner surrenders, it's confiscation cases. So if there's a cruelty case, I've had, you've seen in the news cases where they've taken 100 Chihuahuas from a hoarding situation. So the shelter is the front line in animal welfare. Abused animals, neglected animals, sick and injured animals, dogs on the street, dogs that people don't want to keep. I mean, when you see the stream of owner surrenders, I'm moving, I can't keep my dog. Oh, he got much bigger than I thought he would be. So, the education piece is important because I think that all of us, David, want to have a positive impact. We all want to feel that our life is meaningful in some way. And I think the way we do that, and I think we've all learned it through COVID, is by connecting with things that are important to us. I had a little bit of a health scare this summer, and it's funny because, I realized through that I love what I do. I love my engagement in the community. And frankly, the most outreach I had was from a lot of my rescue colleagues, people from HSUS and best friends. So I think, connecting the community with the shelter is something that's really important. We initiated a partnership with the shelter and with the Underline, which is, the 10-mile linear park under Metro Rail. And I think that in early February, they're going to start opening the Brickell part. But we created that partnership because one of the most requested things in their surveys was dog parks.
A dog trail.
Dog parks. Yeah. Dog parks were the most requested. And when you look at $70 billion a year spent on pets, people love their animals. I mean.
Yeah. I mean, I have 3 dogs.
I don't have to
I just brought one to work the other day. Trying to train it to be an admin assistant. But, it's what's interesting is people don't realize when they buy a dog or they adopt a dog or whatever, how much responsibility there is for, whether it's a small dog or a large dog. It really is a lot of responsibility. And it's just like, you just can't give it back when you decide to move. And people really need to get that through their head. It's not a lease. Okay. Right. It's not a lease where you give it back after 3 years. You have to realize that you're basically getting an animal, whether it's a cat or a dog or a bird, and it's basically forever until either you go or the animal goes. And it's 10 a huge to 15 responsibility.
Years is a long time.
And you prove that by saying that there's 30,000 animals that have gone through the shelter
every year,
which is amazing to me. That people don't really realize that. Maybe you have to take a test before you get a dog.
I would like that. I would like that. One of the arguments in the community is that the shelter gives a dog to anybody. Well, for one thing, animals are considered property in Dade County, so they don't really have any rights. Animals have no rights. People have rights. So not only are they property, but when you take in that many animals, you need to get them out of the shelter, because if you don't get them out of the shelter, you're just, especially when you're getting 100 a day or when you're getting 30,000 a year. One of the things that, a few of the things that I really like to promote is, if you're going to get a dog, consider adopting a dog. there are plenty of young, wonderful dogs at the shelter, and even older dogs. I mean, older dogs are amazing because they're dead in a few years. You don't have them for 15 years. I don't mean that literally.
I know, I get it.
You know, you get a dog that's 3 or 4 years old. It's generally potty trained. It's generally calmer. It's not chewing up your things. So adoption is something that's really, really important. And we're trying to bring more resources to the shelter for adopters. So we're going to create some literature so that when they take the dog home, they have some information. We're also talking to them about perhaps helping them produce some videos so that when you're going to adopt, you watch a 5-minute video. Microchipping. If you get a pet, microchip your pet. If your pet is picked up on the street, animal control officers and the police will scan your dog for a chip. And the first thing they do is bring the dog back to you.
And it's so inexpensive
It's
now
so inexpensive
to microchip your pet. It's amazing.
Yeah.
When they first came out, they were really expensive. I remember spending, I think, $750 to microchip one of my dogs.
It's crazy.
But now it's you know, a drop in the bucket. Do they neuter and spay the dogs before you adopt them?
Yep.
How does
So
that
all
work?
the dogs at Miami-Dade Animal Services are spayed or neutered and microchipped when they leave. They come in and they get a routine vet check and they get their vaccines. What happens a lot is people take their pets home and they don't bother to register the microchip, which, you know, which isn't the end all be all, because ultimately the shelter can track who adopted the dog, but it's an easy process to register the dog. So not only do you get your dog back quicker, and I've actually shared on a few different sites a few times that adoption holds are 3 days. So if you lose your dog, you have a responsibility to report that dog to the shelter. You can do it online. I share the link all the time. Report it to the shelter. Go to the shelter with pictures and let them know. Because if after 3 days, they hold the dog for 3 days, after 3 days, if your dog is adopted, and they will call an owner and say, a new owner, and say, hey, David came in and that's his dog and he wants his dog back. 80 or 90% of the time, believe it or not, people say no. I really like this dog. I'm not giving him back. So microchip your dog and register it. Fostering is really important for puppies and kittens in particular. The shelter is no place for young animals to be. There's a lot of disease. There's a lot of upper respiratory infection. You can get parvo. So fostering is really important right now because the shelter population is low because of animal control. There's not a lot of dogs going out on foster, but there are senior dogs that could benefit from foster, dogs recovering from illness. You know, TNR, trap, neuter, and return. You know, we were talking earlier about the cat network. You know, the shelter does free TNR for the community. They do thousands of free surgeries. So if you have a community of cats living in your area, you can get help from the shelter, from the cat network. They come out, they trap the animals, they tip the ear so you know it's already been spayed or neutered, and they put them back where they belong. You don't want to mix colonies because they fight, and there's a lot of problems with that. But it's been proven that targeted TNR, targeted trap, neuter, and return in geographical areas over years significantly reduces the population. So right now, because of COVID and all the limitations, there's not a lot of TNR that we want to support because it's not happening. I mean, there's such a need for it that we want that to be taken care of. We recently partnered with Humane Society of the United States. We gave them a grant for a project called Spay Together, where they did 60,000 surgeries or something crazy to try to make up for all the animals that were not getting sterilized at the beginning of COVID.
What do they do with cats that they bring in that have leukemia?
They try to adopt them out.
Do they?
Yep. They share, and there are rescues dedicated to helping these animals. You know, rescue partnership with the shelter. So a rescue group, a 501c3 rescue group, signs up with the shelter to pull dogs, and they are cats, and you know, they just, you know, they can live perfectly normal lives. They just can only be with cats that are also positive.
Okay, so it
doesn't hinder them other than you know, contagious, so you don't want them mixed with other populations.
So is their longevity or their life the same, or is it shortened?
You know what? I'm not an expert in this field for sure, but they live perfectly normal, happy, long lives. You just can't mix them. So, you know, it's like very often at the shelter, you will have a dog that's not dog friendly or dog selective. And, you know, what happens is, you know, people breed indiscriminately. They don't spay and neuter their dog gets out, they'll have a bunch of dogs, they give them away. Dogs end up on the streets. I mean, thousands of dogs come in every year picked up on the street. The street is nowhere for a dog or a cat. It just is nowhere for a dog and a cat. So, you that it becomes a real problem when you have dogs that are not socialized, that spend, I mean, I look at some of these dogs that the shelter shares for help, and they've got a history going back 5 and 6 years as a shelter dog. They come in, they're adopted, they're found on the street, the people don't want them, over and over again. So dog selective dogs, it means you can only have one dog. If you are at all interested in having a dog, having a dog selective dog is not a big deal. My dogs don't go to play yards. I have 4. They don't go to play yards, parks. They don't go to dog parks. And they're hateful with other dogs because they're never with anyone since they're their own pack. So, those are the high risk dogs. And personally, and through the foundation, we're always looking for ways to, we work closely with Humane Society of Greater Miami. I'm very close to Lori, their director. We just gave them a grant for pet retention. Because Lori is remarkable in this community, and I can call her and say, I have a low-income family. They really need to sterilize their dog. They can't afford the vaccines. Can you help me? We'll fund it. We'll pay, not the foundation, but through these grants. Most of the time she'll do it, and she's got some other grant that covers it. So she's a great advocate for animals in the community. And, you're talking about people asking questions or people letting you know. I mean, this is a great forum. You can go to our website. You can send us an email. You can reach out to us through David. We're going to work, I think I mentioned to you earlier, we're going to work with United Way of Miami-Dade. They have 2 food pantries for qualified families. So FOMA is going to put pet food there. If a family is struggling to feed their children, they're struggling to feed their pets. We want animals out of the shelter. I don't think we'll ever eliminate animal shelters any more than we're going to get rid of the guardian ad litem program. There are people that just don't do right.
It sounds like you're filling a niche that wasn't in the community before 9/11. Or not 9/11, I'm sorry, before COVID-19. How'd you stumble upon that niche?
We started this in 2016. So we've been doing this since 2016. And my focus has always been, I always say that, the shelter is the front line in animal welfare. If you want to change animal welfare in your community, you have to work with your government and your municipal organization to change policies and procedures that make a difference. So cruelty laws are ridiculous. If I call that your dog is tethered outside and never has food or water, the shelter can come out, they knock on your door. If you don't want to let them in, you don't have to let them in. Typically, people are pretty cooperative. So what they do now is they'll get you an igloo, like a dog house, so that, rather than taking your dog away, but they can't take your dog away. So what they do is they come out, they give you a fine, they give you 30 days or whatever the term is to resolve the issue. The laws don't protect animals. And I think that through the Guardian Ad Litem program and Voices for Children, I realize that advocacy isn't just building the play yards and helping dogs. It's really about helping the shelter system and helping our elected officials understand, because for me, quality of life in Miami-Dade County applies to everyone. It applies to our water, it applies to our animals, it applies to our elderly, it applies to everyone. Children are very vulnerable. So I think that Friends of Miami Animals Foundation is really the only organization that works on a global level, on a global scale in animal welfare. And we have built relationships with national organizations like Wings of Rescue, which is a 501c3 that started after Katrina. And it's a gentleman who was a record producer, a manager, and he is a pilot, and he started flying animals out of high kill or high risk shelters. And so during Katrina, they were flying animals out to Texas and other places. So before Hurricane Harvey, during Hurricane Harvey, I was trying to get some animals out of Texas because they were underwater, if you remember. And then Irma started to hit Florida. So I contacted Wings and said, I need to shift my focus. My rescues that were going to take my animals from Texas agreed to take Florida dogs now. So FOMA gave them a grant. We flew them in. We flew out 60 animals out of Miami-Dade. And we did that with Miami-Dade because we wanted to make room for your dog who might escape during hurricane or other animals that were injured. So as a result of that initial grant to them, Rick has flown out for me another 50 animals from the shelter. And recently we flew out 25 cats for them, 5 cats from Humane Society that had been there for 300 to 800 days. I mean, dogs, it's cats that sit there for 2 or 3 and 4 years, and then 2 medical dogs that I personally rescued. So, building these relationships informs the decisions we make about where to put our money and where to put our resources to elevate the conversation in Miami.
So are you more of a funding source than you are boots on the ground as far as operational?
We are funding, but we are boots on the ground. So Facebook Live, we started with the shelter, the Facebook Live adoption events every Thursday at 11 a.m. We do a Facebook Live adoption event, virtual adoption. We started that with COVID because we knew that there would be a problem with having people at the shelter. We initiated the event. We still support the event every week. We give them, for example, we'll give them adopter bundles. So we'll fund food and a bed and a leash and a harness and toys for high-risk dogs, for senior dogs, for bonded pairs, for cats that have leukemia. We'll give them adopter bundles to promote. So FOMA doesn't do hands-on rescue work, but I do that. And so because I do that, I understand where the needs are, and then we look to fill in.
Or you're plugging holes in the system.
We're I'd like to think that we're more than plugging holes. I really like to think that
it's still
I think we're creating bridges.
Admirable to plug holes in the system.
Well, but I think that we're trying, we're plugging holes in the system, right? It's not just a finger in the dike. We're trying to create systems and programs that will survive. And, when I started and I met with the mayor and I met with the shelter director, and everybody's been just terrific about giving us access and letting us work. I realized that what we do, the shelter is limited as to what they can do. They're managing 30,000 animals. The play yards may have seemed like, what a waste of money. Why build a play yard? It's been so helpful for them to get to know their pets. So it's not just plugging holes, it's finding ways to improve and expand what they do. And most importantly, set up policies and procedures so that when I'm not doing this anymore, so when Alex isn't the director anymore and gives me, tremendous access and the ability to help, when the mayor's door isn't open to me, when elected officials don't want to help for, whatever reason. I mean, politics are difficult. The political system is hard and there's so much need.
Don't I know it?
I mean, this is, listen, you provide a great forum for people. So I think it's wonderful. I'd like to see a lot more. We've got a bunch of new commissioners and a new
I'd love to go out there with the camera and do a whole video on the animal rescues and where they bring in. I mean, I'm sure I can get work. Grant and Michael Miller to go out there with the camera.
It's amazing work. I mean, you can ask Jeff. I mean, I do this, 10 hours a day. I do this 7 days a week. I do this all the time. And I have a friend who adopted a dog from me that was a hospice dog. I rescued a dog with sores all over his body. It was cancer. We did surgery. We did treatment. He kept deteriorating. So we shared him on social media, which, this is so amazing. As a hospice dog. He was adopted by a remarkable young woman, an animal advocate. And a few months later, I get a text from her saying, I have a plane going to New York. I can take 10 dogs. We've moved 365 dogs and cats out of Miami. And, they're in rescues that we work with closely, rescues that we all support, rescues that, I just had them call me, a dog that I rescued and did surgery on and did treatment on. Got more cancer, they had to put her down, but they'll call me and say, here's the medical, here's what's going on with your dog. So, it's more than plugging holes. It's really creating sort of a community of advocates, of like-minded individuals. I find that the Miami Foundation has been super supportive in amplifying this work with us. United Way of Miami-Dade is now going to partner with us on pet retention. Wings of Rescue, anytime he has space on his plane, he calls me and says, I can take 5 dogs for you.
So it sounds like that there's other parts of the country that people are looking for dogs, and you get the dogs. How do you know which ones they want, which ones they don't want? Is it through the internet? Is it through videos? Or do you just
all personal relationships? I would never move an animal anywhere that I didn't know. I primarily work in the Northeast because that's where my colleague works, and when they fly back and forth. So the Northeast has a need for animals. As you can imagine, in the dead of winter, you don't have cat litters being born right and left, because if they are, they don't survive, which is, tragic, but they don't have that problem that we have. And I think, Miami is a very spread out community. It's a very culturally diverse community, and we bring different attitudes about animals and about animal welfare. to this table. So there are shelters in the Northeast that don't have any dogs to adopt out, that don't have cats to adopt out. So we've established some relationships with those shelters. And then Wings of Rescue is terrific because they have shelter partners, because this is what they do. They take animals out of, natural disasters and other things. I mean, there are shelters in Florida that euthanize 70% of their animals because they don't have money, they don't have resources, they don't have the ability.
That's disappointing.
So, I mean, if you look at ASPCA, American Society for Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, as well as Best Friends Animal Society, which is a leader in no-kill, they have, I forget what they call it, but they have data showing shelters. If you look at all of Florida, it's not very high because you mix up the 90% live release rate in Dade County with the one in wherever, Well,
I just read an article that Broward Animal Shelter will close for 6 months.
That's a sad story.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure, I'm not involved there. And often people ask me, do you work in Broward? Do you work, you know what? My focus is Miami-Dade County. That's my backyard. That's where my friends, my colleagues.
Well, they're going to keep the animals they have now, but they're not going to bring in any new animals because of some sort of construction fixes that they have there.
Yeah.
Which I would assume, which means that they're going to go to Dade County somehow, or they're just going to sit there and stop collecting them.
I would imagine that some of the national organizations will help with that, and some of the rescue organizations. I think there are problems, and again, I'm not privy to any of it, and I'm not well informed on it, so I stand corrected if I'm wrong, and please educate me if I don't know. But it's not simply construction problems that they have. You talked about no-kill. The shelter director is a 30-year government guy. He knows his way around a budget. He knows his way around making things happen in municipal organizations. I find him to be very helpful and always open to what I have to say. Sometimes the answer is that's not something we're able to do. When you need, herd mentality, herd immunity. We all talk about herd immunity now.
Oh, which reminds me, this whole place is disinfected. Before every interview, we have glass.
Yeah, glass.
At glass, we all wear masks.
I have gloves
and then we sit down and we take our masks off. So we're all very safe here.
Yeah, someone today, I was at a medical facility today, and someone's like, "Oh, I'm sorry," and I said, "Listen, I do this for me. I want to stay healthy, so you get the benefit of the fact that I'm being careful." So I think Broward County, I think you really need someone in a municipal shelter who knows their way around government, who knows their way around budgets, who knows how to make things happen in an atmosphere that is often driven by expediency or just what's possible. So I'm hoping that their search expands for a good shelter director. I am the first to call the director or whoever at the shelter and talk about something that I'm very upset about. But I also have to acknowledge the hard work that it takes to do these things.
And being underappreciated, I'm sure.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's like any service, look, it's an expression I use often. For someone to be a hero, there has to be a villain. So a lot of this vitriol and a lot of this vicious misinformation and outright lies that you see on social media is because people have to be, oh, that dog, got killed. Oh, he's there for 3 months and now they want to kill him. I mean, again, how long do you keep a scared, biting, bark, whatever, behavior dog? How long do you keep them isolated? So it's a balancing act,
How long do you keep it? So how long is the average that a dog stays in a shelter?
The average is probably not as long as you would imagine. But I've moved dogs out of when I move dogs out of the shelter. So, back to transport. Transport is, as somebody made a comment in the movie we talked about that, they move dogs out of the shelter. They send them off to different places. And I went up to the person who did the piece on it. And I said, transport is a nationally recognized way to save animals because Delaware doesn't kill animals. Boston, Massachusetts needs animals. Maine needs animals. There are shelters that sit empty because they don't have population. So, what I do if I'm going to be able to transport dogs, the first thing I do is I call my partners and say, what is your current population? So that I don't want, if you've got 6 American bulldogs, 6 squareheads, as I call them, I love it's my favorite breed now. If you've got 6 American bulldogs you're trying to place, I don't want to send you another one. I want to help you mix your population. I don't move dogs that have behavior issues because unless someone knows that that's what they're getting. I have a shelter in New York that actually took a separation anxiety dog that I rescued. And that's a really hard thing. But, for transport, you really need to be a positive force in that. You want to give shelters that want to help you animals that they can place, animals that they can manage.
See, I never knew that different areas in the country needed animals. I mean, you just don't think about that, right? It's something that doesn't cross your mind.
All the time.
And
they just moved 500 cats out of Hawaii. Because Hawaii, with COVID, no flights in or out. So Wings of Rescue, along with greatergood.org, went to Hawaii and flew 5 cats out to shelters in the Pacific Northwest.
And how does the transportation get funded? I would assume, is it funded through?
Well, Wings of Rescue is a nonprofit, so they raise money for it. Transport. So shelter partners, shelter transport partners, they have an agreement between them. The shelter has to do certain medical stuff. They have to quarantine dogs for 10 days, make sure they don't transport any disease. The shelter drives them to where they're going. Now, of course, since March, there's no transports going on. It's a mixed bag that animal control has not been going out because that means that there are less dogs at the shelter. The bad part about that is that they're on the street. Many of them are still on the street. But I don't know what they would have done had they continued to intake animals at the same rate that they always do. I just thought of something. Sometimes people say, oh, the shelter, they have so many animals and they kill. Like, it's not like they're breeding them in the back. It's not like they're producing animals that they can neglect and kill. It's a community issue.
It sounds like it's come around a lot in the last 20 to 25 years, where you heard the horror stories of a dog going in, and a day later or 2 days later, they got put down because there was no place really to send them out for adoption. By the way, I want to give a shout out because I'd get killed without giving a shout out to a good friend of mine, Silva Kaligian, who actually wrote a book about dog rescue. It's called God Spelled Backwards, A Journey of an Actress in the World of Dog Rescue.
Somebody just gave that to me.
I gave it to you.
Oh, you did? Okay.
I gave it to you.
Silva
Kaligian is a long life friend of mine. She grew up in Miami. She's out in LA. She's an actress, and she does a lot of animal rescue.
I just finished 2 books, and so I just moved that to my nightstand.
Oh, I think I gave you one a while ago. So maybe you got 2 of them. Maybe you got 2 of them.
No, it's the one. It's the one you gave me. And then I have, this is the cutest thing. So this is called Pandemic Pals, and this was written, I think it's a 7th grader. Her mom is friends with somebody that I love very much, and so she wrote this cute little book called Pandemic Pals, and it's about a little dog named Murphy whose life is turned upside down because, of course, his family is home 24/7 now. So it's a really cute book. So we're going to see if we could maybe do a book club reading up in Bell Harbor with Steph Safey and maybe have an adoption event, because anytime you ask me to do anything, I'm like, can I bring dogs? But, things have changed so much. I think, it's the hashtag adopt, don't shop. People are really understanding that there are some good breeders. I'd like to say there aren't. There are some good breeders, but those are breeders who limit the number of animals they breed a year, who really do it in a conscientious way to improve the breed, and not the puppy mills, which is what pet stores sell.
I've been to a puppy mill. It's disgusting.
It's
really
it's
not only disgusting, it's eye-opening, and it's criminal.
It's barbaric.
Yeah.
It's criminal.
Yeah.
It's absolutely criminal. And the pet stores that sell them, I mean, there's lawsuit after lawsuit with sick and
I'm hoping those pet stores kind of go away.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's a lot of money behind them, and in Tallahassee, there's not a lot of will to change that. The lobbying industry is just remarkable, but there's strides being made. I think that people are, social media. I mean, imagine 5 years ago, we wouldn't have thought to do this. You might have done it as a one-off, but I mean, the shelter does an adoption event every week virtually now. everything we do essentially. So I think that the culture is changing. I think people are understanding. I think one of the bright spots in COVID has been people have really come to appreciate the companionship and the value of having an animal. I mean, I know that in some of my darkest days, I'm so grateful for my animals.
Oh,
not last night. Not last night when my dog ate a book.
When I go to bed at night, there's 3 dogs in my bed lying with me. Okay. And by the way, I don't want to beat up too much on some of the breeders, because there are breeders. There's one in Lakeland.
No, there are
that are really not.
Right.
The facilities were absolutely amazing.
Right.
It was for a golden doodle or a couple golden doodles, and the facility was absolutely amazing.
I got one of those.
Yeah, I wish
she ate a book yesterday.
Yeah, really.
Oh yeah.
I wish I lived in as nice a complex as those dogs do. So
the problem, that's breeders like that. Breeders that are bettering the breed and being responsible are not the problem. The problem are the puppy mills that indiscriminately breed and inbreed animals and sell to pet stores
and they're in backwoods. I mean, the puppy mill
really
I happened upon was in Tallahassee in the backwoods.
It's unbelievable.
And it was just, you just walk out of there and you're shaking your head and you're going,
how is this possible?
How is this possible?
I loved when you invited me, I loved the gloves off, because I've often thought that we should do a shock campaign. We just had the conversation that, we're always posting positive. You know what? The truth is that there's a lot of terrible stuff. I mean, your gentleman asked me when we came in about something I posted. There's a family whose dog.
Tommy, our engineer.
Yeah, Tommy, whose dog needed eye medicine for his eyes, needed treatment, and they couldn't afford it. So they removed the eyes. But people are understanding that there are other ways to do it. I mean, I'm encouraged by it. I find it disheartening. The malicious information that goes out, I find disheartening, tearing people down, and sadly, the people that are the most vocal and the most vicious are the ones that are not rescuing animals. They're not writing a check to help a rescue take an animal. They're sitting in judgment when they're really not doing anything. And it's like anything else in our community. When you get in the field, when you go out and you understand the need of elderly, right now, I know that Dade County Public Schools is teaming up senior students with senior citizens because they're homebound. They're completely isolated.
Oh, no. I've heard of stories where people have given cats to assisted living facilities for people that are there because they really need the companionship. There's some very life-changing stories that you hear about what animals can do for the elderly.
Yeah, they're training dogs for COVID detection. Did you see that? They're doing it in Finland, and I think the Miami Heat is starting to do it a little bit. I mean, I think that we've learned, certainly I've learned through COVID and certainly through animal welfare, connecting, we're better together. We're stronger together. When we understand, we see it in this country everywhere. If you don't understand where someone is coming from, if you don't have to be in their shoes, you just have to have empathy. So I'm encouraged by it. I really am encouraged. And there are very few days anymore, I think, where I say, oh, why did I ever get involved in this? There are days, but for the most part, the underline partnership is going to be a remarkable partnership. Every month, the shelter is going to be at the underline. So we're going to do an adoption event one month. Another month, we'll do free spay neuter. Another month, we'll do a wellness clinic. Another month, we'll do training for your dog. Another month, we'll do play groups. We also Friends of Miami Animals Foundation just gave Dade County a grant for a mobile wellness clinic, which unanimously passed the commission. We gave them a mobile clinic and a $500,000 grant to fund the first year, and the county funds year 2 and 3. And what that will do is it will go into communities where there are no vets, vet deserts essentially.
In Dade County.
In Dade County. Mm-hmm. We can target by zip code. We go into a community that has no vet services, and we'll park there for 3 months, and we'll do routine vet care. It gives us an opportunity to see people's dogs. I mean, when you see a 14-year-old dog surrendered to the shelter that's never been to a vet, the teeth are gone, the eyes are bad, there's,
heartworms.
A lot of it is they don't have access. Yeah. It's no access. So, the mobile wellness clinic will not only provide free routine vet care in communities that don't have any vets to people who cannot afford routine vet care, but it gives us and the shelter a chance to be in the community. the underlying partnership, I like to say, we're bringing the shelter into the community and the community into the shelter. And I think that's how we understand what the needs are around us. I think that's how we, together as a community, create creative ways, find and create ways to make it work. So I'm encouraged. I really.
So if you were to wake up tomorrow, right, and all your dreams regarding nonprofit were to come true, where would you like to be as far as what you guys contribute and how far you've advanced the issues with dog rescue? I mean, what is your end goal to make sure that some of the situation is taken rectified as far as dogs?
I think that the most important thing really overall, the overarching mission is education. I think when people understand what the needs are, how simple some of the solutions are, we can do better. We can do different. So I think that the overarching issue is education and resources, obviously. So, we raise money. That's, nothing happens without money. We are a fundraising organization, but the fact that we amplify volunteer service, that we support fosters during COVID, when COVID first hit, the shelter was doing a food distribution drive. They were doing free pet food. The first time they did it, 450 cars came through representing 1,100 animals. People sat in line since 5 a.m. for an event that opened at 10 a.m. They actually opened it earlier. So they were getting dogs out in foster care. They wanted to clear the shelter so that they could take in. They assumed that people would panic and start dumping animals or they'd be on the street. So I went to Dadeland Station.
Mm-hmm.
I placed the order online the night before. I went to Dadeland Station in the morning, and they loaded me up with a few $1,000. PetSmart. Dog beds, harnesses, leashes, dog food, so that dogs could go into foster care. So, I think when you let people know what the needs are and you let them know that there are solutions, I think that we step up. I think that we all want to do better, and I think that we all want to feel connected. So I think the primary thing is probably education. If you have to pinpoint one thing, I mean, spay neuter is like a no-brainer. Every dog, I frankly would like to see, and you can tell every elected official that sits in this chair, I would like to see, certainly not mandatory spay neuter, but I would like to see a high license fee for unsterilized pets.
Well, I got to tell you, what's interesting is there is a differential.
There is a differential.
It's
not that much.
Probably not that much.
Not that much.
But what's interesting is in Monroe County, it's actually free to get spay neuter. It doesn't cost anything. And
in their shelter or where?
I think through their shelter. So it would be interesting if they could go that route, and maybe they can offset it by charging a higher licensing fee.
The shelter does free sterilization.
Yeah. Oh, does it?
Yep,
okay.
They do free sterilization. One of the challenges is that when things are free, they don't have as much value to people. So people make appointments and then they don't show up.
No.
So you have a clinic, you schedule 15 appointments for the day, 6 show up. You have a team that's there that's underutilized.
Well, they should be fined.
So this is where, and again, the requirements and the ability of a public shelter are different than a private shelter. They don't do background check. I mean, I do everything on my adopters. I when my dog goes to be adopted, I have a trainer go to do the introduction, and I give him a free session so that the dog has the best chance. But we have to find ways. I mean, I'm curious to see how the medical clinic, the mobile wellness unit, is going to work, because we are going to be parked in a community for a few months. So I think that part of it is building trust in the community. But, more spay neuter surgery, that really has to do mostly with capacity, with the ability to do it, with doctors and techs to do it.
Will they do spay neuter in the mobile clinic?
No. It's not set up. It's but routine vet care. But what we will do is we will provide a coupon or some kind of a certificate for free sterilization. Okay. So I'm hoping that we're able to do deworming or treating for worms, heartworm prevention, maybe flea and tick if I can get an underwriter for that, and then a coupon or some kind of, and a lot of that work is going to be about building community. It's going to be about having people trust the shelter. It's going to be about having people trust us. And that's a little labor intensive. It takes time, it takes effort. I know the University of Florida has done a lot. I think it's called it's not the Million Cat Challenge, it's something else. But University of Florida did that kind of a program where they went into communities. And from my understanding is what took the most time and energy and money was getting people to trust you, was getting people to come use your services. So, I think I think that I've been successful in this arena because I try to amplify what other people are doing. I try to support what they're doing and bringing everyone into the tent.
So I'll repeat. I think it's come a long way in the last 25 years. You're definitely making a contribution to Miami-Dade County. If people want to volunteer, if people want to donate money, do you want to?
Yeah, please go to www.fomapets.org. I think he may have it up on the screen in a little bit. You can sign up to volunteer. You fill out a form, and then it goes to the shelter. They're doing virtual training right now, but through Friends of Miami Animals Foundation website, you can donate to specific programs that we're working on. You can sign up to foster or to volunteer. And then we have a blog we put out, we have a newsletter. So we try to be a resource for the community. I think, you mentioned earlier, we're the only organization that does this. There are rescue groups and shelters that take in animals or network animals or, whatever. But, we're trying to work with the whole system. And again, my focus is Miami-Dade Animal Services. I work closely with Humane Society. We recently did a grant for Animal Welfare Society of South Florida for pet retention. It's a nonprofit, small medical clinic, but it's low cost, and it's, if you come in and you can't afford it, they'll work out a payment plan for you. They charge you minimally. So it's really, tide rises, everything goes up. I mean, that's really, I think, how these things change. That's how systems are improved.
Great. I do want to thank you for being here.
Thank you.
I do want to apologize for anybody who's trying to email us. Any questions? We're sorry. We've had a little technical glitch yesterday and today. It should be back up. Please, if anybody's interested in the nonprofit with Yolanda, please can you give the email address again?
The email is info@fomapets.org, but you can go on the website, www.fomapets.org. And, we're pretty engaged on social media, so check us out at FomaPets, and we're on Facebook as well. And thank you for this platform.
Yeah, I got to tell you something. It's a great nonprofit, Friends of Miami Animal Foundation.
Yep.
I really appreciate you being here. Hopefully I'll see you again
in
the near future. We're going to come in and we'll bring a moving camera with us next time.
We're good. We're good. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.